So let's start back at your journey going into poker, man. Walk me through that. What was that about?
Yeah, great question. I was recently just a college dropout. I knew school was not for me. It's not what I wanted to do. I just knew the way my brain functions, that this is not what I wanted to do. I don't want to have like mental anguish for another 4 years. And that's really what school felt like for me. Even though I could pick up concepts pretty quickly, I just hated the schoolwork and the tedious amount of reading this book and having to regurgitate information. It's not the way I operate. I dropped out fairly quickly, and my brother, very shortly after, who's 5 years older than me, won a poker tournament about almost a year and a half or a year after I dropped out of college. And I just said, shit, if my brother can do it, he just won 1.4 million. He ain't that much smarter than me. So let me just go take this and start playing poker. And the cool thing about it was, like, I got really good upfront training from my brother, really big high concepts and what no one was doing back in the day. So when I was young, he just taught me to be super aggressive. And most people are very tight and very conservative with their money. And that's what I did. I just started coming out the gates swinging and being aggressive. And I just started winning money in poker very early on, which probably skewed my life for a while, but whatever. It was fun.
So I actually want to dissect that a little bit. So first off, there's this quote, I forget who to attribute it to, but it talks about like your first entrepreneurial tests. They say the first two entrepreneurial tests you go through is school and your W-2, like your corporate career. The first test is, do you do well in school? Are you just accepting of everything that gets thrown at you? And you're like, okay, I'll happily do the work that I'm assigned. And then the second one is, do you fit that cog in the corporate machine? And so I noticed a recurring theme. We're all like, wait, hold on a second. Why am I learning this? Why are we doing it like this?
Right.
Come on. And then the second thing I want to dissect there is you've got like the people that never win a break. And so they're used to being like at the bottom and they can't ever catch a break. And you've got the people that have an early win. So it could be a blessing and a curse. But then they're like, hey, I'm going to be aggressive and shoot for the stars moving forward, sometimes to their detriment. Which do you think is more beneficial in the long run? Because I think it gave you an edge.
Yeah, I think it's a very easy pick. What's beneficial in the long run? It's not about having success early on and then failing. I think it's just having the core belief. One thing that I like to talk about, I really try to impress onto any entrepreneur that I see all the successful people around me really emulate, is that we're long-term thinkers. So it's never about the short-term failures or successes. It's all about, who are you going to be 20 years from now? How are you doing what you're doing now to reap the rewards later on? The way I look at my life, Brian, is that I am absolutely 100% going to die one day. And I know that we know that conceptually, and that sounds stupid and ridiculous to say, but it's true. But I also do know that I'm going to get old one day. I also do know that I'm going to want a family one day. And I do know that I want ultimate success one day. So I got to start doing everything now and delay my gratification and keep betting on myself for the success later on, because that time will come and you'll thank yourself when you're earlier now. I think most entrepreneurs have that, but when you have a really accelerated scale to look at your life like that, you can start making some really ultimate great decisions. And that's another thing that poker has taught me, is that like you have to make short-term decisions that are based on long-term results. Even though short-term, your variance rates in poker and decision making change so much. It's a massive swing to what you could do, what's right, what's wrong, for short-term results, because cards, it's a lucky game in the beginning, but long-term, it's a skill game. So it really just taught me to think long-term. So even though I had a lot of success playing poker early on, it was quite difficult for me to step back and then get into real estate, because I knew I was going to take a massive pay cut, and I knew I was going to have to work on the bottom, and I knew I was going to have to build everything again. But I did that because it's like a slingshot. I was okay with taking 2 steps backwards to take 10 steps forward in 10 years from now.
So you said it starts with luck. Like the game is lucky in the beginning, but you have to stay in the game and play the long game to actually really reap the rewards. Talk a little bit about how that applies to poker tactically, and then how we can macro that out into entrepreneurship at large.
Sure. Okay. Really good question. So when you're playing poker, you're going to have short-term results. Like, even if I make a bet that's 80% in my favorite, right? The cards I'm favored. So I'm going to put all my chips in 80%. And even though I lose, it doesn't matter. I still did the right decision. Even if you're 51% favorite, depending on the game and other variants, but like just for black and white circumstances, you're still supposed to put your money in against a 49%er, right?
Sure.
Even though you're probably going to lose a bunch of times, you have to be able to handle the variance. So that's what I mean in poker. Like short-term results do not dictate long-term results, because no matter what, we know if we flip a coin over 1,000 times and you're getting a 51% edge over a 49% edge, you're going to win in the long term. So you have to keep doing the right decision over and over again. That's what gets embedded in poker players, is that we're continuously trying to siphon in incomplete information to make good decisions. That's how we're trained. That's all you're doing, is making good decisions all the time, and sometimes high-level decisions all the time. You're just trained to this being over you. Now, how does that really work in our like real life and in, let's say, real estate investing? The way I look at it, this is a very simple process for me. I look at everything long term. A lot of people ask me, why don't you do off-market campaigns and cold calling to sellers yet? I haven't done that. I still go through the traditional approach. I'm only going outreaching to brokers. I'm still building relations because that's who I am. But I'm going to get to a key point. But what it is that I would rather go find these deals that are 30% IRR returns that I can keep, that are going to keep cash flowing forever for me. And I'd rather go buy 10 of them than rather to go buy one or two 40%, 50% IRRs. The reason being is because when I was very early on in my real estate career, I now realize I wish I kept all of those properties for rental income. And so I'm just trying to get my hands on as many assets as I can. Now,
to extrapolate the main point that I took from all of that, it's just a game of controlling the odds in your favor, right? Just making sure the pendulum ever so slightly swings more so in your favor through each calculated. Just like the casino at the roulette table, they're going to put the 0 and the 00 to make sure that they have that 51% or 52% edge over you. And then in the macro, just finding that edge and finding that 2% variance that you say, or margin, that's going to add up to a fortune and billions of dollars for the casino. That's why I like entrepreneurship outside of corporate America, because corporate America, there's a couple of different levers that you can pull that are controllable to stack the odds in your favor and decrease your odds of that promotion, to increase your odds of that salary, increase that raise. Entrepreneurship, when we're talking about from a betting perspective, yes, there's way more downside because you could go to zero or worse, debt. But also you have way more control over levers to pull to increase your odds of success in investing in business and everything. Throughout your journey, you've been through a couple of different operations that we'll get into in a second. What are some of the telltale, like macro levers that you've seen in your entrepreneurship journey that you can pull to make sure that you're going to be one of the people with the edge over the majority that fail this game?
Yeah, so this is a great question as well. My outlook is, and it came from poker as well, is I go where there's less competition. My brother's a very famous poker player. He's one of the winningest poker players in the world. And so he always got recognized. And he always wanted these like big names and play against big names. I never gave a shit about that. I just cared about cash games. I cared about where there's less competition. I cared about where I have an advantage, because I am not the best poker player. I am not that good of a poker player, but I was able to get into games. I would go to the casinos and only play the good games, and I would just seek out these like different games that where the players were just worse than me. It's like a very simple model. Yeah. And that's how I've always looked at my career and my life. Where can I go where there's less competition? When I first started flipping homes, I quickly found myself very attracted to buying the properties that were like a quarter burnt down, that they had hoarders living in there, that the ones that the people don't want to touch. Because what I figured out early on in my real estate career is that the more problems that you solve, the more headaches you have problem solving, the more you get rewarded. That's what happened with my development career as well too. I didn't really know much about development, but I knew there was less competition, there's higher reward there. I did that as well. And then that's what also led me into mobile home parks, and like I'm operating a niche within a niche at this point. And I'll always do that. That's my investment thesis. I have numbers I want to hit, and I will always go where there's less competition, always.